Welcome to the Capital News. I am your host, Alex Koritis. Today is Monday, October 12th, 2020. Thank you so much for joining me. The title of today's podcast, What's the Market Pricing In? These markets are virtually priced to perfection, meaning that everything has to go according to plan. Otherwise, there could be some sort of significant sell-off. And I want to touch on some of those points that I think that the market is pricing in, or what it might be ignoring at the same time. Now, nobody knows. This is anybody's guess, but I'm just trying to put together what I think is an educated guess as to what the market is sort of anticipating. And is this just a continuation of buying the rumor, selling the news type events? Because we haven't seen a lot of actual news events sort of solidifying the buy the rumor, sell the fact. Meaning we have a lot of rumors, we don't have a lot of facts yet. Meaning we don't have a spending bill. We don't have therapies for COVID-19. We don't have a vaccine for COVID-19. There are a lot of things, there are a lot of rumors, there's a lot of talk, but we don't have the substance yet. And is that enough to drive these markets? And is that enough to keep them going throughout the remainder of this year and through 2021? So we're going to go through a list of some of the things that I think that the market is pricing in. And some of them you might find surprising, especially if you support Donald Trump. And we're going to go through some of the recent polling data as well surrounding the presidential election and some tight races in the Senate as well. But first, to the market performance for today, we have right now the dollar index trading up slightly, trading at 93.174. Again, that's the dollar index, and we're seeing some dollar strength across the board against a basket of currencies. Of course, the majors being the euro, the British pound, the Aussie dollar, the Kiwi, the Japanese yen, and the Swiss franc. Dollar strength across the board. Now, if this continues, we might see further weakness in the stock market, but you wouldn't believe that today because all averages were just basically through the roof today. And your guess is as good as mine as to why that's the case. One of the stories that they are pushing forward is, well, we're starting earnings season, which of course is true for the third quarter, kicking off with the banks, et cetera, et cetera. And these are supposed to be good earnings, even though on a year-over-year basis, they're still going to be lower, which would be a continuation of trend over the past 3 years. Corporate profits peaked back in 2014. That's before taxes. Corporate profits before taxes peaked in the year 2014. So much for a booming economy just wasn't there. And we know how these companies were manipulating their share price with stock buybacks and what have you. Now, that's something different than profits, but you understand when it comes to earnings per share, that was the financial engineering that was going on. But a huge day in the tech space because Apple, which was already known, but nonetheless, this is just justification. This is just headline noise to justify some sort of big rally. Apple is going to announce and do their presentation on the new iPhone. So I don't know how many cameras this thing's going to have, if it's going to just do everything for you. I don't know how we made it this far with mankind, but, Apple's putting out a new phone. That's why the NASDAQ has to go up 3 percentage points today. And Amazon Prime Day, which everybody and their mother knew was coming too. But all of a sudden this week, well, Amazon's got to go through the roof. And of course, these are big drivers for the tech sector. And they take up a big portion of the Dow 30 and S&P 500 as well, which is basically just continuing to carry these markets ever higher. It's extremely concentrated, and to me, that's extremely dangerous. But right now in overnight futures trading, we have the major averages all down. The Dow Jones Industrial Average and the S&P 500 are both flat. The NASDAQ 100 is down about 0.1%, and the NASDAQ 100 is once again above 12,000 points. The cash trade in Japan is also flat right now. Across the pond, a mixed bag, but mostly in the green, the exception being the UK market's down about 0.25%. Cash trade in Australia is up 1.25%, and the cash trade in China is down 0.5%. Reiterating what I just stated, huge day for tech. Apple gaining 6 1/3% for the day alone. Tesla gaining about 2%. Microsoft up about 2.6%. Amazon gaining 4.8%. Alphabet, the parent company of Google, gaining 3.6%. And to round it out, Facebook up 4.3% as well. Those are huge gains on the largest companies in the world. So you're talking tens of billions of dollars gained in market cap. If you add them all up, it's probably a couple $100 billion. Just amazing in one day alone, off of stuff we already knew was coming. So again, these markets are just completely decoupled from economic reality, but we've been in this situation for quite a while. On the commodity front, we have crude oil trading at $39.47 a barrel. Brent is at $41.47. Natural gas still maintaining around that near 20-month high at $2.82. Gold and silver, not too much movement today, but both are currently down in overnight trading. We have gold at $1,912 an ounce. Silver giving back 1.33%, currently trading at $24.78 an ounce. The bond market was closed for the Columbus Day holiday. And before we get into some of those other items as to what the market is pricing in, today was the first day for the confirmation process for Judge Amy Coney Barrett. A lot of just opening statements from the senators, opening statements from the judge. Like I stated yesterday, the Democrats have to be extremely careful here. If there's any group of people that could screw up their lead in the election, it's the Democrats. And the same thing was true 8 years ago with Obama. The only idiots around that could have screwed it up to lose to Obama in 2012 were the Republicans. So this is just reversed, and it could definitely happen, meaning Trump could win re-election. Although, like I stated, we're going to get to some of those polling numbers because I think that's something that the market is pricing in. But nonetheless, a decent opening statement from the judge outlining some of her beliefs, and she's prepared to answer questions. Some other witnesses testifying on her behalf. There's really no question that this woman is most likely well qualified for this position. It's just politics. That's all it is. It's hypocrisy, like we stated, because that's exactly what it is from the Republicans. But the Democrats would have done the same thing. But that is the problem, ladies and gentlemen, that everybody just lets it go, continues to let it go, because as long as it's your side, it's perfectly fine, because your justification is, well, if it was the other side, they would do the same thing. And then that event will inevitably occur, and then you'll be a hypocrite, they'll be a hypocrite, and round we go. And nobody can figure out why we can't get anything solved. Why it's runaway debt, runaway deficits. Why there's so much decay, disorder going on throughout this country. This is why. Because you want to continue to vote for these idiots. So you cannot be surprised when nothing fundamentally changes. The Democrats, with their opening statements and their remarks today, was really focused around health care, trying to scare their constituents in the country and saying, well, if we vote this woman on to the Supreme Court, she is going to vote against the Affordable Care Act, being Obamacare, and a handful of other measures that the Republicans are trying to take away your health care, pre-existing conditions, yada, yada, yada. And from a political standpoint, that's probably one of the smartest things that the Democratic Party can do with this confirmation hearing, because if they get nasty with her, they can turn off a lot of people, and you can get a lot of people on the Republican side to go out and vote for Trump, even though they might be on the fence. So they don't want to tick too many people off, but they also have to understand that the Republicans simply have the votes. This is constitutional. There is nothing unconstitutional about this. There was a vacant seat. The president has the right to nominate somebody. He's done so. The Senate has the right to bring that nominee to a vote. That's what they're going to do. And with the Republican Party in control of the Senate, they have enough votes to get this nomination through. So the Democrats, they can try as many parliamentary tricks as they want to. It's only going to get them so far. This is basically a foregone conclusion. And Judge Amy Coney Barrett is going to become Justice Barrett in the not-too-distant future. Again, I just hope it's as civil as possible, that this doesn't derail from the tracks and go down the avenue that we witnessed, which was just such a travesty for this country, during the Brett Kavanaugh confirmation process. I don't think the Democrats are going to do this because I think they're at least smart enough to understand that you're only a few weeks away from an election. You need as much turnout as you need as possible. You don't want to turn some of the Republicans who are saying they're not going to vote for Trump to get really agitated and turned off by their antics with this confirmation and say, you know what, screw the Democrats, I'm going to give Trump another 4 years. So they have to walk a fine line. They're just going to turn this into politics. They're going to try to scare their voters. Look, this is why you have to vote for the Biden-Harris ticket. Republicans are coming for your health care. They're coming for your health care. Do something about it. Vote. So that's what we're going to see. She is going to be she's going to be confirmed. It's just a matter of time. So that's that, and we'll keep you updated. If there's anything that's really nasty, I guess we can talk about that during this week, but I hope that's not the case. Now, for some of the things that the market is pricing in. So, of course, they like the Apple news. They like the Amazon Prime Day news. And, of course, the markets are just chomping at the bit. They're just frothing at the mouth for more spending, more money for the Congress to spend that they do not have. Another couple $1 trillion? I mean, why not? What difference does it make at this point, right? So they love this. They love the continuation of the talks between the White House and the Democrats and back and forth. I mean, they're basically bickering over couple $100 billion. What difference does this make? Are these people serious? I think they just like the headlines that continue to drive these markets forward. Why actually have a deal if your real purpose is just to juice the markets? Because if you actually have a deal, then there's something to look at, and there's nothing to juice the markets anymore. Buy the rumor, sell the news. So they're just going to draw this out as long as they possibly can, despite the fact that there are still 26.5 million Americans claiming some form of unemployment insurance, that there's a massive wave of evictions waiting in the wings, that there's a massive wave of insolvencies and bankruptcies waiting in the wings, and with all of that, massive rounds of layoffs. Now, the markets might like the layoffs, at least short term, because they'll say, oh, that's headcount. Personnel is usually the biggest cost item. So now these corporations can maybe produce some better profits because they're not working with as many people. They have lower costs. Now, of course, that is very, very short-sighted because there will be negative downstream effects because of that. Even though long-term, companies running more efficiently, being more productive will be better, but that's part of the correction. So there's going to be a lot of pain in the interim. And we know with all the data that we go through how many zombie corporations are walking around. This is the economy of the living dead. So more spending is one of those items that the market is pricing in. The market is pricing in a Biden-Harris victory. And even more so, probably a pretty strong and convincing victory, meaning that it's really not going to be contested. Now, this is the market. I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but this is what the market appears to be pricing in. So Thunder Thumbs can tweet out all he wants till he's blue in the face, to his heart's content, that the economy is coming roaring back, that this is a super-duper V-shaped recovery. Of course it isn't. And that the markets are making all-time highs, and of course he congratulates himself for this. But the markets, in all reality here, are pricing in a Biden-Harris victory, and a convincing one. And we'll get to some of the polling data here shortly. Markets are pricing in some therapies for COVID-19, perhaps a vaccine, even though these are not likely going to be ready for the vast majority of the country until the first or second quarter of next year. And of course, now we're entering the winter season and the flu season. So now we're going to have the traditional flu season mixed with COVID-19. Markets appear to be shrugging this off, even though cases are rising, not only here in the U.S., but across Europe as well. The markets do not seem to be pricing in any type of risk, or they're basically ruling it out, that there are going to be any major protests or riots, that they are not going to happen, that there's not going to be any more conflicts internationally, or any type of wars, despite the fact that we are seeing a major conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And in the midst, you bring in Turkey and you bring Russia into the mix, and it's surrounding Iran. And do not forget that the Turkish currency, the lira, is collapsing. Same thing with Iran. And they continue to see increased cases of COVID-19. Further sanctions have been placed on them from the United States. They are in dire straits. This does not appear to be priced in from the markets whatsoever, any type of collapse here. What Iran might do in retaliation out of desperation doesn't seem to be priced at all. They're just saying we're not even concerned about it. We're not concerned about the collapse in Venezuela, Argentina, Turkey, Iran, South Africa, and other countries on the brink. They just don't seem to worry about it. Not at all, because if something happens, they're just going to say, well, the Federal Reserve is going to come to the rescue. Congress is going to come to the rescue. The European Central Bank is going to come to the rescue. This is extremely dangerous. This is not a market anymore, ladies and gentlemen. This is a perpetual money-making machine because there's no fundamentals. It's nothing. It's a joke. If you even have that type of conversation, you're really just kidding yourself at this point, which is a true travesty in and of itself. Just print the money, borrow, beg, and spend. Stuff that we don't have. And as long as the stock market goes up, everybody appears to be happy. And of course, everybody is really just the top 10% because they own 90% of all financial assets. That, to me, is a recipe for disaster. But the markets are not pricing that in. They are in their bubble, and that's exactly where they want to stay. So you have Europe, and where do we even start with Europe? With the collapse of their banking system, with the Bank of England contemplating seriously implementing negative interest rates, and now going to the banking system in the UK and asking banks, what do you think about negative interest rates? This is just the slow creep until they formally announce that they are going to adopt negative interest rates in England, following their brothers and sisters in Europe. This is a joke. You also have rising COVID-19 cases. Will countries lock down again or put on more restrictions? You have talks between the European Union and the UK surrounding Brexit. Now, given the volatility and what's been taking place through 2020, both sides probably want to sit down and actually get something done because they don't want to throw more uncertainty into the mix, more conflict into the mix. But if you understand European history, that's par for the course. The volatility and the conflict, that's what Europe's known for. So I wouldn't say by any stretch of the imagination that it's going to be smooth sailing between the European Union and the UK moving forward when it's regarding Brexit talks. But it could be. The market's no volatility. The VIX index for the stock market, no concern whatsoever. The MOVE index, which is the volatility index for the bond market, hitting all-time lows, not concerned whatsoever. And the bond market dwarfs the stock market by orders of magnitude. That is the real market. But the stock market's not concerned about it. Nobody's concerned about it. Is this the calm before the storm? Which I think it is. But the stock market clearly doesn't think so. It thinks everything's fine. It thinks the Federal Reserve has everything under control. Yield curve control is working beautifully well. That's why the MOVE index is hitting all-time lows. J. Powell and company have everything under control, which I think is just a ridiculous notion, but that's what these crackheads want to believe. They have more money than me, so they're getting their way. And then the dollar index. What about the strength of the dollar? What happens if the dollar should reverse its downward trend over these past several months and really make a big spike higher? Well, what's that going to do to risk assets, especially the stock market? Because what might cause a spike in the dollar? Is it going to be a liquidity crisis? Well, we just stated that this market is driven by liquidity. If the dollar rises because of a liquidity event, meaning there's less dollars out there, then the dollar's going to spike. Less liquidity, less money to go into the stock market, stocks come down. What happens as a result? Is it a continuation downward? Are the crackheads in Wall Street going to go back and simply say, oh, this is just a dip? The Federal Reserve will get this under control. Congress will spend more. Rinse and repeat. How much longer are we going to be able to do this? Why do you want to support this type of policy? Because that's what you're going to get with another 4 years of Trump-Pence is what you're going to get with 4 years of Biden-Harris. You understand? There's no difference amongst them. Yeah, you can cherry pick a handful of topics, and if you really think structurally that makes them different, I think you're just greatly mistaken. Greatly mistaken. And again, I think I have all of the evidence in my corner. So the market is pricing in a lot of things here, and it's to perfection because valuations are still extremely stretched. You have total market cap to GDP at 180-some%. Now, that's because of the huge fluctuations that we saw in the second quarter. This number will obviously come down once the third quarter numbers are published, which should take place at the end of this month. But nonetheless, they're still going to be at near historic highs. And this is one metric after so many others. We've done several podcasts over this year talking about extreme valuation measures. When you look at some of the 7 largest, those FANG names, right? FANG Man. 7 companies, when you add them up, their market cap, they're larger than some of the largest countries in the world combined. Now, how sustainable do you think that is? I don't think it's very sustainable, but the markets seem to think that it is, that it's perfectly fine, and that they can go higher and higher and higher. I think at this juncture, the risk-reward is just really not there. But, if you're an in-and-out trader, this might be the perfect market for you. If you're a long-term trader, if you have a long time horizon, maybe it's not so bad. If you're somebody who's closer to retirement, I'd be pretty concerned personally, but that's me. Get your gold and silver, protect yourself because they're just throwing money at the system, hoping something sticks and hoping people continue to buy it. And it's only going to get you so far, in my opinion. So those are some of the things that the market appears to be pricing in, and of course, we'll see what happens. Now, again, Donald Trump wants to take credit for the economic recovery that's just not in existence. It hasn't even discussed a lot of those issues that are waiting in the wings. The market doesn't seem to give a damn about them either. But all the polls are indicating a pretty sizable win for the Biden-Harris ticket, and even for the Democrats to regain the Senate. So if we're looking at real clear politics and their national average, you have Biden at 51.8 and Trump at 41.6, so an increase, so a gain over of 10.2%, a lead of 10.2 percentage points for Biden. If you look at some of the battleground states, you have North Carolina, Biden is up by 1.9%. You have Georgia, which is razor thin, Trump is up by 0.4 percentage points. Florida, you have Biden up by 3.5 percentage points, but that lead is narrowing. We have Pennsylvania, Biden up by 7.3%, and his gain is expanding. It's at 51.1% to Trump's 43.8%. We have Wisconsin, Biden leading 6.3 percentage points, also expanding his lead at 49.9%. Meanwhile, Trump is at 43.6% in the state of Wisconsin. State of Arizona, we have Joe Biden at 48.2%. and Donald Trump at 45.5%, so Biden is up 2.7%. State of Ohio, razor thin. Biden is up 0.6%. Biden is expanding his lead in Michigan, up 7 points. Iowa, Biden is up 1.2%, but Trump is gaining some territory there. State of Texas, which somehow is in play potentially, we have Trump up 4.4%, and I imagine Trump will carry Texas. But with a lot of people leaving the state of New York and California, they're taking their politics with them. So the electoral map is going to change. And Nevada, Biden is up 6%, 50.3% to Trump's 44.3%. So the markets are saying this is a Biden-Harris victory, and it's going to be to such a degree that it's going to be laughable for Trump to contest it. So this isn't going to be contested. It's not going to be a tie. It's not going to go to Congress, and it's not going to go to the Supreme Court. That's how much the market is pricing in that Biden and Harris are going to win. This is most definitely not on the back of a Donald Trump victory when you look at all of this data that's out there. Then we look at the Senate. If you take, again, real clear politics, you have a battle for the Senate. 47 Democrats, 46 to the GOP, the Republican Party, and then 7 are up for grabs. If you go by what the polls are stating, taking no toss-ups, you have 51 Democrats, 49 GOP. That means the Democrats are going to be in control of the Senate. And when it comes to the House of Representatives, that's basically another victory for the Democrats as well. Now, of course, in the 51 number for the Democrats, that also is going to include Bernie Sanders, who is an independent, but of course caucuses with the Democratic Party. And you also have Senator King up in Maine, who is another independent, but he too caucuses with the Democratic Party. So that's going to be 51 for the Senate. And then, of course, even if it should get a tie for some vote, 50-50, and you do have a Biden-Harris victory, well, then Kamala Harris will be the tying vote in the Senate. So this can very much turn into a blue wave. And the markets seem to be fine with that. Why? Because the crackheads think, well, they're going to get even more cheap dough. There will be more stimulus. There'll be more spending. There'll be more begging and borrowing. The Federal Reserve's going to love it. So the crackheads on Wall Street are going to love it. Now, if the Republicans won, they're going to get it too. They're just saying, well, if it's a blue wave, we're going to get a little bit more. That's all this is, folks. That's why you can't support either of them. This is completely destructive to this country. But I guess Rome really has to burn before the people understand it. They actually have to see it, which is a true travesty, because that's what's likely going to happen. And then across the various states, it depends on the state that you're looking at, but the Republicans are in trouble. I mean, Real Clear Politics even has South Carolina as a toss-up right now. That's, again, between Lindsey Graham and his opponent, who, again, like I stated yesterday, raised some nearly $60 million for the third quarter. Record-breaking. Record-breaking. And while money may not win seats, it doesn't hurt, does it? So you do have some Republicans in the Senate in trouble, in the state of Maine, in the state of North Carolina, state of Georgia, Arizona, and maybe South Carolina, and the state of Colorado. We're only a few weeks away. Basically steady as she goes. I mean, unless there's some sort of bombshell news, some sort of October surprise that we haven't seen or heard yet, which is quite possible. Another interesting thing that I wanted to mention the other day but didn't is Donald Trump, I guess, attempting to relive 2016 and basically trying to force his Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, to release emails related to Hillary Clinton. I mean, the man's been there for 3.5 years. If it was such a national security threat and such an act of treason, then why is he coincidentally waiting 2-3 weeks before an election to bring this back up? I mean, this is sickening that he is ordering people within his administration to do a political hit job at this juncture. And I have a lot of problems with Hillary Clinton and her emails. But he's had 3.5 years to do this. Mike Pompeo has been his right-hand man for the past few years. Why now, all of a sudden? He's just trying to throw red meat out to his base. To me, this is a disgusting display of politics and a disgusting abuse of power to do this at this juncture. Other news that came over last week was that the U.S. Attorney John Durham, his report is not going to be coming out until after the election. At least that's what we're being told. This is, again, a TV president who just wants to say, stay tuned, folks, till next week, stay tuned. I mean, how many reports have we come across over the past 3.5 years where he said, oh, this is finally going to be it? An Inspector General's report, another U.S. Attorney's report, they all turn out to be nothing burgers. Again, this is just the hype. If there is true acts of treason or national security threats, they need to be known. The American people have a right to know. But the president wants to wait a couple weeks before an election to bring up Hillary Clinton and her emails once again, which is what I stated to this audience many, many months ago, that this was going to turn into a political you-know-what show. This is how the president acts. I stated this earlier this year during the impeachment trials with the perfect phone call with Ukraine, which of course was not perfect. That was the best piece of evidence for the president, because once you looked under the hood at everything else, it wasn't a pretty picture. as to what was going on. Now, I don't want to relitigate that, but I'm just trying to show the history of this president's behavior, how he thinks, what he does, saying that he would make as much political noise as possible, that he would use some of the departments in this government for his political advantage. Because even if something earth-shattering were to come out in some of these reports or any of these findings, half the country isn't going to believe it. Because one, they despise him, and another reason, and even more importantly, is because he has lost all his credibility. Because these are the games he continues to play. This is the boy that cries wolf. Over and over and over again. And for some reason, people continue to believe him. It amazes me. It astonishes me that people can continue to believe this guy. But they do. And they're going to vote for him again. And he could very well win. And this is not me advocating for a Biden-Harris ticket, because I don't want them either. This is just the state of affairs of this country. It's despicable, it's disgusting, and it's an embarrassment. I can't endorse either of these parties. Voting isn't about winning, that you have to vote for somebody who's going to win. No, voting is about principle. Voting is about standing for something. Voting is about having your voice heard. Even if you lose. Maybe, most definitely, if you lose. That's what it's about. I'm disgusted with this system. My generation and younger generations and generations yet to exist are screwed because of what these people have done. And most of them are not going to be walking this earth much longer because they're 80, 90 years old, still walking around the halls of Congress in the White House. They're not going to have to deal with the true destruction of the policies that they have laid for my generation, younger generations, and those yet to be. Completely immoral, unethical, and un-American, and they're going to get away with it. So that's what the market's pricing in. It's priced to perfection. The slightest thing goes astray, and we can see some big volatility, which I am imagining is going to take place over the coming months. Stay diversified, stay vigilant, and stay with the Capital News. I am Alex Koritis. Godspeed.